Okay. Well, usually it interrupts you with like recording in progress. So, um, yeah. Okay. And for folks that are just joining, we're just going around doing some introductions first, and let's go with Jess Colby next.
Hi all, I'm Jess Colby. I'm the Riparian Lands Program Coordinator at Northwood Stewardship Center in Vermont. We are primarily focused on native tree and shrub seed collection for large-scale restoration projects happening here in Vermont. And I'm a part of a few different partnerships that are kind of emerging out of the Northeast. So here in Vermont, I'm a part of the Riparian Lands Native Seed Partnership, which is a collaboration amongst Northwoods, the Intervale Center, Vermont Fish and Wildlife, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and that's primarily for that large-scale restoration direct seeding project that they're working on. And then we're also a part of the Northeast Seed Network slash the sub hub that's forming out of the like Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, New York area, the Northern Appalachian, Acadian Maritime sub hub. So those are all still like very new, but yeah.
Cool. Sounds like some good action up there in the Northeast. Chris?
Hey everyone, Chris Woolridge. It's very sunny here in Chicago right now, kind of blinding, but I'm at the Chicago Botanic Garden. And yeah, as Alexis said, me and Andrea Kramer here, we kind of we're getting the Midwest Native Seed Network started, and we're with it covering kind of a large regional area. As of right now, we're seeing it primarily as a like information kind of sharing network and hub, and trying to figure out some meetings for the upcoming winter and stuff when things kind of are at least at a more manageable pace for a lot of land managers and such. So wanted to kind of hear from you all about how you engage folks in your network, and what's worked and what hasn't. So yeah, excited to learn from y'all. So thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Matthew Merks.
Hi everyone, I'm Matt Merkis. I am the plant conservation and restoration specialist here in California. I work for Chicago Botanic Garden, contracting with the BLM, doing SOS support for the crews and working with growers and finding new growers. Um, but I have done native seed collection for the past 4 or so years, 5 maybe. And yeah,
Great. Glad you're here.
thanks. Thank you.
Isabel?
Yeah, hi, good morning, everyone. Isabel Yanishes with the Healthy Soil Working Group in New Mexico. We're not officially part of a partnership, but we've helped just promote the Southwest Seed Partnership, and a lot of the growers working with IAE in New Mexico are, I know them and they're part of our membership as well. Seed saving is my passion, especially native seeds. And I'm joining today because I'm hoping to hear, about the future of IAE in the Southwest and in New Mexico, the office, and then also how we can help. Because maybe there's something that we all could do, taking over some facilitation duties or whatever it may be, right? So I'm really here to offer some help.
That's great. Yeah, we can help connect you to some of folks in our Southwest office if you're not sure where to go. But yeah, I guess I could also add that we're able to keep these coffee breaks going thanks to South Dakota State University, Laura Perkins, out of I'm not sure what her lab's name is, but she does a lot of native seed work up in the Northern Plains area where they're starting a partnership as well. And she was able to get us a little bit of funding to help coordinate these all through next year. So she just emailed this morning to say that that paperwork is going through. So that's exciting. So hopeful to plan these out, spend a little time planning these out after this one for next year and see where that takes us. So Yeah, we'll keep going with intros though. Peter.
Hey everyone. I'm just gonna warn you, Alexis, that my laptop has been having some battery problems, so I may just suddenly disappear, and I'm sorry about that. My name is Peter Steiner. I work for the Blue Nose Coastal Action Foundation, which is based in Mahone Bay in Nova Scotia. We're part of that Acadian Maritime sub-hub that Jess Colby was talking about. We I'm actually kind of here as a representative for a big conservation collaborative we have here in Nova Scotia called the Gesboig Conservation Collaborative. So I'm the lead coastal vegetation specialist on my team at Coastal Action. But I'm also here kind of taking notes for the KCC, which is a collaboration between the Southwest Nova Biosphere Reserve, which is a UNESCO region, the Mersey Tobiatic Research Institute, the Clean Annapolis River Foundation, and to a certain extent other universities like Dalhousie. We do our network is really heavily focused on the Northern Tree Seed Center, which folks may be familiar with. And in that capacity, we do a lot of my focus personally, and in general, the KCC's focus is on Atlantic coastal plains flora. Particularly some woody shrubs like Baccharis homofolia, that kind of thing, which are super endangered in Canada. In our region, there are sort of like little pockets where we're the only northern outpost of certain Atlantic coastal plain species. So we do.
Oh, that might have been losing his laptop. Well, that's cool. That's exciting though. Yeah, we're getting a lot of Canadian folks added into our mix, and we see that represented in the abstracts we got for our virtual conference too. So that's exciting. Okay, we'll move into Maggie next.
Hi, I'm Maggie Musante. I'm from Long Island, New York. I am part of the Long Island Native Plant Initiative. I am the lead nursery manager, and I've been with them for about 5 years. Lindsay has been operating for about 10 years, but in the last 5 years, we've really pushed forward with a lot of native plant sales and have been really working hard on our seed increase plot that we call our founders plot, where we have warm season grasses and wildflowers growing. So we hope to increase seed production and create partnerships to get our seed out on the market, especially on Long Island, and we're in Ecoregion 58. So anything from Long Island, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. Thanks.
Great. I'm glad you made it back, Peter. We were just saying it's, yeah, great to have you here from Canada. It's exciting. Okay, Casey.
Hi, Casey Greenstein with the Homer Soil and Water Conservation District in Alaska. We don't really have a seed partnership at all. We've had a few false starts trying to get something together. A couple years ago, some Fish and Wildlife Service people tried to start a native plant working group. And then in January, with change in administration, they're basically told that's not your job, you can't do that. So it kind of fell apart. But just in the last couple months, we've been getting together with the other soil and water conservation districts and tribal conservation districts, and just to see what they're up to with native plants. It seems like there's a lot of organizations just doing it as a very, very small part of what they do. So the partnership thing isn't really happening because it's like, maybe 10% of somebody's job at 10 different organizations. But I guess I'm the only person in the state that's like fully funded to just do this as my job. So that's why I'm here. And yeah, we've been having a whole lot of conversations and I've been talking to a lot of people, but just not getting anywhere with it. So if you guys have any advice on that, I'd appreciate it. Like I'm up in Anchorage right now for the statewide agriculture conference. So I can talk to some farmers about trying to get native plants into their agriculture practices. I was up in Anchorage again a couple of weeks ago for the statewide invasive species partnership. And I've been going to those meetings for like 15 years. So I keep talking to the invasives folks about like getting rid of the bad plants and replanting with natives. And yeah, we had another meeting with Alaska Landscaper and Nursery Forum, trying to get those guys to like use some native plants. But right now it's just a whole lot of talking and not much movement, and we keep running into the same problem of a chicken and egg. Um, People want to know what they can buy, but there's nothing to buy because the growers want to know what they'll be able to sell, and it's just the stalemate. Like if nurseries, landscapers, restoration specialists would just tell us what plants to buy, and we'd start growing them. So anyway, until all that gets straightened out, we're not going to have a seed partnership, but I'm going to keep trying.
Yeah, that sounds like a very standard problem that we all, I think, see at times, and definitely a big discussion we're having kind of in Washington, Oregon, Northwest Oregon nurseries. Yeah, the demand side of things. Okay, final introduction, Mary Paul.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mary. I work for the Elkhorn Slough National Estuarine Research Reserve, which is one of 50 reserves across the U.S. that is funded by NOAA, but it's also part of the reserve I work on is managed by California Department of Fish and Wildlife. So it's an interesting state and federal hybrid kind of mix. And we have our own native seed farm that we use for restoration on our projects, but we've been talking with local state agencies, mostly state parks and other regional agencies about kind of looking at creating seed partnerships where we could either use the seed that's grown locally in these regional projects or have like a pathway to share equipment, share resources, share maybe a staff person to help manage some of those seed farms or facilities that we would have. So definitely interested in looking to how to and learning how to facilitate those conversations moving forward, and create just like a regional partnership, like what we're all here to learn about.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks everyone. It's really nice to hear a little bit more about, the region you're in and what's happening there with partnerships and networks and just plant materials development. So like I mentioned, I guess we didn't usually with these meetings, we have a specific discussion topic and invite somebody to come and do a quick presentation on that and with some discussion questions, but we didn't quite get that together. I know Liz was trying to get Jonathan Young from the Arkansas Audubon Society to come and talk about, his project out there, which is a lot of new native seed grower development and like creative solutions to sharing equipment and things like that. And he's been hard to nail down, but he has a really cool program. So hopefully I can get in touch with him and we can have him join us sometime next year. But Chris and Andrea from the Chicago Botanic Garden sent in a few questions about how do you engage folks in your network and how do you communicate with folks? And I know not everybody here is maybe part of a developed network, but maybe also some of these ideas could kind of link into what Casey was talking about with, trying to start a partnership and bring together like existing initiatives and how we might do that. So I guess maybe I'll just open up the floor for kind of discussion, maybe starting with how do you engage folks in your network if you have a current one or if you're trying to start one or it's a new one. What have you done so far to engage folks or reach out to potential new partners? Anybody want to dive in with a response or thoughts?
Well, ours has been fairly small scale, just by word of mouth. Like folks know what we do, and we work with various other nonprofits on restoration type projects. And so what we've started doing this year is reaching out to folks in our region that are other, nonprofits or do restoration work or are like landowners of, large scale, and developing seed collection agreements with them where we can at least make conservation collections on their lands. And then that kind of starts building those relationships. And through that, we've had folks then reach out with seed requests for different projects, and just know that like we are that resource. We do a native plant sale once a year, and like that's bringing in almost 500 people into the nursery for one day every year. And so part of that is just like talking to folks and making sure people know the work that we can do, and then trying to link them to other, if we can't provide seeds because we're at a pretty small scale, trying to find other folks that are within our network who can. We don't have anything like a formal website developed or anything, but ideally that would be where this would go, I think. And we are working with BLM and other federal folks in our region through what is it, like a native plant working group, not necessarily a seed partnership, but we're kind of sort of serving multiple roles through that, I think.
Yeah, that's great. I feel like our plant materials program here at IAE kind of acts in a similar way where we get a request, and if we can't help fill it, like either growing or collection, then we'll look around and or ask around and see where we can or how we can help them. Kind of like seed brokers in a way.
Just quickly gonna say, we've kind of briefly talked about this, Alexis, a little bit, but like I mentioned, I'm not coordinating like a partnership or anything, but I do work with a lot of our partners and do a lot of seed coordination for them as well. And one thing, because we struggled sometimes to have growers really participate kind of within the partnership. And one thing, I've been here almost 5 years, and just this past year, one of the growers that we've really been trying to kind of like connect with and stuff, after like multiple years of buying seed from them and kind of just keeping that good relationship, has finally started to ask me more questions. Like I'll sometimes reach out and be like, hey, would you be interested in XYZ? And they'll be like, no, but now they're starting to approach me and be like, hey, actually, maybe I do want to learn a little bit more about like contract growing and what does that mean? And so it's kind of like that building up. It takes, almost 5 years, that's a long time, and it's hard to like think about. Yeah, anyway, but that's just something I've been thinking about a lot, is building up these relationships and what we also need to give in order to, the reciprocity piece, I guess.
Yeah, I think one thing we've learned over the years at IAE within our partnerships is the transparency and frequent communication are really helpful. I think at the start of our older partnership, there was maybe less transparency in what IAE's role was, and what we were, not necessarily what we were doing with the funding, but just like, but we weren't as transparent. So we've started kind of showing more like annual, costs for the partnership, and just communicating more frequently, mostly through newsletters that we put together on Constant Contact. Although it's hard because that Willamette Valley partnership hasn't been very active for the last year and a half or so. But we, in 2022, I think we implemented a stakeholder engagement project that we got specific funding to do, and that led us to do a lot of one-on-one interviews, to reach out to partners and chat with them, give them an opportunity to talk to us about their organization and their restoration goals and plant material needs. That's where we started these quarterly newsletters, sending out seed availability more frequently. That we wanted to do a small regional conference with that funding as well, but that's the one that kind of exploded into the 2022 virtual conference, the first virtual conference we had. So yeah, but that still brought, I mean, we had Willamette Valley focused speakers, as well as this a Southwest portion as well. But yeah, I guess just building on what Morgan was talking about with the relationship building, and I think we found that to be really important with the growers in our region. And so I think whatever you can do to have their voices be heard is helpful. And then, yeah, just frequent communication and transparency with what is going on, I think is important. But I'll stop there, I think.
That was awesome. Have you all like Morgan, the grower that finally kind of started reaching out to you, was that like a larger grower that, because like initially talking to some of these folks, it's like, I feel like they're kind of coming at it like, well, I don't really know what I stand to gain from engaging in this kind of network and stuff. So, I've kind of said, like, I think it's kind of coalition building. It's like, we're not trying to, I understand, there's, we're not trying to create more competition for anyone, but I think that's a very real concern talking to some folks. I don't know, I guess I'm kind of going down a tangent here, but since we kind of went down that way a little bit, talking with growers, but
yeah, I think that is a real concern that we've seen kind of with the partnerships here, is this competition piece. And so it has been a lot of I would say they're a mid-size, they're not like our biggest Willamette Valley grower, but they have been they focus a lot on like waterfowl. And so they've, been really doing a lot of seed stuff for kind of duck hunters and stuff. But then they've started to get more and more, into the native seed kind of world. River Refuge Seed is actually who I'm talking about. So yeah, anyway, I think there was the competition piece, and then, but like continually kind of talking to them and purchasing seed from them for some of our other projects, I think has really helped. And also whenever he asks questions, just like what Alexis was saying, is like, I have been extremely open about like, well, what could these contracts, provide for you, that you like, starting a new species for them is kind of daunting, because it's like, who's going to buy it? And like, what's the demand? And then how do you do it? And do you want to like take something productive out of production to then put in something else that you're not sure what's going to happen with it? And so one thing that we've been talking about with these contract grows is like, well, you get paid, the way we set up some contracts is you get paid no matter what is produced, kind of. So it's like, we have a 2-year contract with you or a 3-year contract, and you get paid for that time period, and we'll just take whatever, seed comes off of it, not by, seeds per pound that you kind of do, or like poundage that you get off the field. So I think that was intriguing to them, to be able to learn how to do a new species without, like, with less of the risk kind of deal. And maybe talking about like, well, after this 3-year contract, you can keep that seed and then you can sell it, so that kind of conversation is what sparked more of it for them.
Thanks.
Yeah,
I think that's a good way to put it, Morgan. Like, if it's a new to them species, yeah, like reducing their risk and learning how to grow that. And if they're already a commercial grower, that could help them over time. Because like I think one thing we're wanting to do is diversify what species we're growing, because the seed market here has grown a lot since our partnership developed, the Willamette Valley. And so trying to adjust like where we might fit into that into this like new market that now has more species than it did when the group came together to build the partnership. Yeah.
I had another question about that.
Yeah.
We have just been awarded funding through a specialty crop block grant to work directly with
good.
farmers. I think we just have to like pick 2 that we think are going to follow through and give them some funding to do what you're saying, like just give them money to experiment with growing out some native plants. But we haven't like really detailed out exactly what that's going to look like. We figured we just have a conversation and figure it out. But if you have any like, you know, nuts and bolts kind of tips, I mean, we could maybe connect outside of this meeting, and or even just like a template for a contract kind of thing. It'd be great to have a starting point.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I was like,
I thought Morgan was unmuting, but I think she was typing.
yeah, I was typing. You can respond, Alexa.
Oh, just yes, we could definitely chat about that.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. In terms of like engaging or communication, and maybe for folks that are still like maybe developing a partnership, like how are you doing outreach to folks that maybe your organization hasn't worked with? Like you don't have an established relationship or partnership? Has that happened? Anybody?
I think I might be able to talk to that question a little bit, which is a big portion of the activities for different project coordinators up here that are associated with the KCC are doing landowner biodiversity assessments or agricultural biodiversity assessments. There's a lot of funding available for farms that are trying to regenerate shelter belts or build new windbreaks using native plantings as opposed to non-native plantings. And so it's a way for us to have boots on the ground and contact with agricultural producers who are already showing some interest in doing remediation or regeneration of their landscape. They want this biodiversity assessment, and that biodiversity assessment will allow them to connect to greater funding to do more native plant work on their property. And so it's often a great first conversation piece for us to start building a relationship with them to see if they'd be interested in growing out native seeds for our own remediation work in other locations. And I think that as a technique, offering that service as a not-for-profit, kind of like an independent third party to landowners, biodiversity assessments are a really amazing way to do more thorough survey of what would otherwise be private land, and also kind of get the gears turning in landowners' minds about how they can start moving their agricultural practice more towards the native landscape and away from some more intensive, you know, highly commercial, like growing feed corn or something like that. So I don't know if that answers the question for anyone, but it was a thought.
Could you say one more time what specifically that was called?
Yeah, we do 2 different types of assessment. We do a landowner biodiversity assessment, an LBA, and that is often for people who would like to start doing agriculture on a tract of land, but are maybe struggling with some of the first order funding, especially if they want to focus on a crop that doesn't have a built-in market. You know, I mentioned feed corn. Other classic markets here in Nova Scotia are like carrots and wheat, that kind of thing. If you don't want to grow that, getting an LBA done first can really help connect you to some of the government level, provincial level, or federal level funding to help your farm get off the ground. And then the agricultural biodiversity assessment, the ABA, is for existing farms who are struggling with some of our invasives in the province, like multiflora rose, you know, Himalayan blackberry, that kind of thing. they really want to access money to start taking that off the property. Maybe they also are struggling with, you know, 18th, well, 19th century windbreaks that are now reaching the end of their lifespan, and they don't just want to plant non-native hawthorn. They want to do something a little bit more drastic and last on the landscape longer. So that ABA is a great way to connect them to funding. And then often we also have the opportunity to connect them to some of our native plant growers that are part of the network as part of that. So we will then connect them to the E.C. Smith Herbarium or the botanical gardens over at Acadia University, who have a large native plant collection and they sell plants, or some of our other seed growers like Twisted Brook or Annapolis Valley Seeds. It's kind of a way for us to also support the seed growers in our network by like connecting them to a built-in market. These people want to do remediation, and we already have people in our network who, you know, grow the plants and the seeds for that kind of remediation.
Thank you.
Well, I can chime in maybe just as an example of what we've done to promote the Southwest Seed Partnership. So I basically just collaborated with the IAE office here in Santa Fe on a blog post. And so they put a little text together and some pictures and you know, then at the end of the blog post, it says, are you interested in growing native seeds? Connect with the Southwest Seed Partnership. And as you can see, if you click on the link that I just put in the chat, there is actually, we got like a lot of comments on that blog post, and then people also reached out in private, and a couple of them that were growers in our newsletter network and blog post network, right? They actually wound up working with IAE and the Southwest Seed Partnership to grow native seeds after that. So that was a really simple thing, and you could reach out to some of your local nonprofits that are affiliated, or also this Southern Water Conservation Districts. Anyone who has a mailing list or a blog or something like that could elevate your call for new growers. It was really successful.
Yeah, that's that's great. I was just seeing Casey's question about working with CSP or equip programs. And I think that's what Jonathan Young down in Arkansas has done at some point. I think the equip program, it might have been the CRP, but I'm not sure with NRCS, but just linked his website. There. He also, I saw him talk last year in 2024 at a meeting, and he had some handouts that had a list of benefits for like the landowners or farmers that were taking on native seed plots. And I think they were a little bit based on the NRCS program, but I think that there could be some you know, crossover or, you know, similar ideas that could be modified for like a seed partnership that's not part of an NRCS program, or a landowner or a grower, I guess. So yeah, I guess speaking of that, I guess just to, I guess maybe build on other things I've said, just thinking about like what else we came up with our engagement project a couple years ago. But I think giving people a opportunity for their voice to be heard is really important. Either offering, you know, participation spots in a committee or a working group if you're like subdividing the partnership up into groups or committees. The annual meeting is a great place for that. Surveys are good, but hard sometimes to get people to respond to. But it's just another opportunity for them to have their voice heard about like their needs or thoughts on like the structure of a partnership or something. Yeah, and even if people aren't speaking up, knowing they have that opportunity, I think is nice. Yeah.
Alexis, you said you'll have like a annual meeting?
Yes, we try to
Uh-huh.
have an annual membership meeting in the fall. We didn't have one in 24, or I have not planned one yet for this year, so I don't think it's happening. But we do have some new coordinator funding for our Willamette Valley partnership. And so hoping to use that to really dive back into it next year. But yeah, we generally have an annual meeting in the late fall, and we go over things that have been, kind of the activities of the year, looking ahead to the following year. Mostly that's about seed collection, seed production, and then any steering committee topics that have come up. We'll typically have a steering committee meeting prior to the annual meeting just to make sure we, figure out the agenda for that ahead of time. And then let's see, 2 years ago, we did a lot of breakout rooms and specific questions. We had some growers there, so we had a specific grower breakout. And then I think it was more like end user restoration breakout with some specific questions, and then the full partnership and some questions there. And I'd be happy to share like our agenda and the questions and just all the resources from that. I'd be happy to share. For folks, because that was a really good meeting. But then things kind of just fizzled out after that because our coordinator switched to a different role within our program. And then I was trying to take some of that on, and that's been very hard. And now we don't have funding to hire an official partnership coordinator. Liz, we were hoping to kind of move into more of that role. So yeah, now I think it's Morgan and me will be doing more of that. And then our coastal partnership, Kate, she's our previous seed partnership coordinator. She's still managing the coastal one, and we're in the midst of an engagement project there. And that one is focused on developing like standard seed mixes for coastal habitats based on input from partners. And she just led a workshop yesterday on seed mixing and also gathered some information on demand from North Coast partners. And we're hoping that those standard seed mixes will help drive or help build like more of a coastal production industry, because they'll have this kind of set list that the group of partners that need seed have put together. There aren't really any specific coastal growers, and there's not much coastal genetic stock out there. So I think that's kind of an empty, or like a gap in the market that we're hoping that this info could fill, and maybe give some other growers the confidence to do more natives because they know that there's this set of partners that want this set of species because it's a standard mix that we've agreed on, kind of thing. It's still kind of new, this idea, but it's an idea I've been hearing about, kind of the standard seed mix way to address some of the demand, because getting demand from partners has been very difficult for lots of reasons. So kind of flipping it the other way, I guess, by saying what the demand could be, at least in part. I mean, those mixes aren't as diverse they won't be as diverse as what people should probably be putting out there, but I don't know how long they're going to be. Yeah, anyway, so just at the very beginning of it. But I'm curious to see where it goes.
Can I jump in and mention one thing specifically
Yeah.
about seed mixes, Alexis? And anyone who's in like a coastal northeastern state might already kind of be aware of this, but you'll see there's already a phenomenon where you're seeing salt marsh grasses jump onto major roads that are, somewhat coastal because of the huge amount of salt that's thrown onto the roads each year. So all the major roads in Nova Scotia, the major highways in Nova Scotia all border the coastline, and DNR, Department of Natural Resources, here has had really, really difficult time keeping any of their vegetated strips on those roads properly vegetated, because the salt tolerance of most of the species they've tried is pretty low. And so we've had pretty good luck connecting some of our local seed growers who grow seed mixes for salt marsh restoration to DNR, providing them with like really quite large bulk orders of seed, specifically to try to do some remediation of those vegetated strips with native plants that are already, somewhat appropriate for the ecotone that the roads cross right through. So that might be an option for people in the right biological territory. Sometimes you can connect folks who are interested in making seed mixes like that to really large bulk clients like highway maintenance crews, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I would love to get our like state Department of Transportation more involved in native seed world. But I know there's some county agencies we've talked to on the coast or county groups. I think one that's roads and one that's invasive species, and there's a lot of those along the roads. So yeah. And you guys must get a lot of snow on your coastal roads or no snow? Oh, okay.
It's honestly too windy. Like the major like biological features of Nova Scotia are crazy amounts of salt wind being picked up from the Bay of
Oh.
Fundy and the Atlantic shoreline getting carried inland. And we just don't like have snow accumulation really, except for like maybe 6 weeks or so of the year. We're pretty snow free.
Oh, okay.
Which, yeah, that's part of what's contributing to the difficulty of keeping some of these areas beside roads planted is they don't even have snow to protect them. It's
Yeah.
just like bare year round. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. It's an interesting perspective. And that also just kind of, I guess, makes me think about just understanding or like getting out into the field and understanding other people's perspectives, I guess, more. I mean, I don't get out enough, but meeting with some growers on the coast a couple years ago and them talking about their specific challenges with just growing their like vegetable or flower farm that they had, and how that might play into growing native plants was interesting to hear. Um, yeah, and so I also just like hearing from the restoration ecologists as well, and is helpful. So, Chris, I don't know. I think maybe you had a response to or a question.
It was a bit of a different question, but it seems like some networks and partnerships and stuff like, there's the different sub hubs popping up and working groups and stuff, and was wondering if people could share any experience they have with, some of these working group formations and like what's worked there and what hasn't, like having a real specific goal that everyone can work on, or anything that folks have like kind of tackled in that regard. So getting things going.
The sub hub up here in Atlantic Canada is administered through Acorn, which is like a organic farmers advocacy group. And a lot of what they've focused on when it comes to like native plant growing and growing native plant seed has been directly related to kind of industrial level, not industrial level, but like large scale agriculture. Like as an example, we just passed through a pretty major drought up here. Folks who do work with cattle, any kind of livestock, were really struggling to get hay. And so Acorn was doing some major programming related to what's called salt marsh hay. There's a Spartina pumila out here is a halophyte grass that doesn't hyperaccumulate salt in its tissues. It just tolerates salt. And some of the first settlers in Nova Scotia used it as forage for sheep, that kind of thing. And Acorn was suggesting to especially farms that are coastal, but Spartina pumila doesn't necessarily have to grow coastally. It can be a meadow grass as well. They're encouraging people to consider shifting over their pastures to Spartina pumila because we're likely to see greater and greater droughts in the future. And this particular grass is, halophytic, generally drought tolerant, generally quite readily available for livestock, that kind of thing. And it was really effective. So linking people who already have agricultural property to native plants through sort of the economics of the farm that they're already running. They're struggling to get hay. Well, maybe there's some native plant options for you to actually feed your pasture animals. Yeah, I don't know if that links with what you were saying, Chris, but it was a thought.
Thanks, Peter. I have a hard time seeing my screen.
Yeah, that's kind of is something I've been like thinking about as we've got these names that include network or partnership, and just realizing that they're different, and usually it's difference in scale, it seems like. So you're like the Midwest network, I don't know how many, you must be multi-state, and same with like the Northeast network, even multi-country if they're going into Canada a little bit. So and then like what we call partnerships here are very regional, the Willamette Valley is an ecoregion level 3, and that's our like sea transfer zone and stuff. And the coast is like a long but narrow strip, but certainly it's just the need for one partnership. But wondering if we might move into like a Pacific Northwest seed network at some point, and bring in Northern California and Washington efforts. So I guess some of that's like in the network piece, that's more of your like hubs or sub hubs, but I don't know how you would go about developing those on a larger scale.
Yeah, I think we're seeing ourselves as being more information sharing as opposed to doing a lot of, there's a pretty robust seed production and a lot of growers here and stuff. So getting folks on board with they're still doing some of that like supply and demand stuff, but helping bridge those connections and stuff and connecting people, I think. And then we have some seed banking capacity here and stuff, so being that kind of resource in terms of seed. But
yeah, I think there's a lot of need for more resources, but also like getting funding to develop resources or compile them has proven difficult.
yeah.
But that is also, I guess, a side note on the some funding from South Dakota State. I also talked with Laura about like maybe bringing together a subgroup of seed partnership coordinators and network coordinators to start thinking through the resources that we might want to like develop. Liz and I had some ideas about developing, like a how-to guide, although that's kind of difficult because the seed partnership model, it's not a one size fits all. So but maybe more it's guides based on different types or some sort of standardization. But I was hoping to, like bring a smaller group together in the off months of the coffee break and see if we could come up with some ideas on resource put together, but then I guess how we might get those put together as well. So I don't know if anyone can hear my yelling cat, but he's yelling at me to go outside. Okay.
I think that's a great idea. We did put together a couple years ago a short document for Alaska on like how to start a native plant business, which isn't necessarily like really specific. It's just like all the things that you need to consider, how native plants differ from agricultural crops, and like, do you want to start a seed business versus a tree business versus, plugs? So that's, I don't know, it was kind of tailored to Alaska, but be happy to share that as it's what we got up here anyway.
I'd love to see that, Casey.
Yeah, I can put a link in the chat.
Thanks.
Yeah, and our hope was to put all of or add some of this to the Native Seed Network Seed Partnership Hub website, which maybe I'll just pitch again as there, and has some info about these meetings, directory partnerships. She has a resource page started, but I don't think there's anything on there. But we do have some strategic plans, I guess. And also part of that NSN website is the community forum, where we could have some kind of in between conversations about seed partnerships. No, yeah, we have been trying to get this forum to be more active, but it doesn't look like really that's happened. So, but that's a place where we could all start some, some threads on different topics and keep talking about things. A little easier to write a quick response than attend a whole hour-long meeting. You do have to create a login, but it's really just getting like a WordPress login basically. So yeah. Well, we're about at the top of the hour. Oh yeah, thanks. Here's a link from Casey. I'll add to the notes also. Yeah, we'll be a little more organized for January. And if you have ideas on a topic or a presenter, we could work on a more focused discussion. And we'll go from there and start planning out the rest of the breaks for next year. So.
Great.
And don't forget our 2026 Seed Conference is coming up in like 3 months. If you're interested in attending, we should be releasing some program info before the holidays, December holidays.
I tried to take some notes. I can kind of clean them up a little bit and share them out to. I'll share them to you guys first, and then.
Okay, great.
And thanks, Alexis, for sending that reminder email. I didn't actually see the time, and then I came on, and so I really appreciate that you sent that out.
Yeah, glad you could join us. Welcome back to work.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks for keeping it going, Alexis.
Yeah, thanks for your
Appreciate it.
interest, because that's helpful. It's good to know it's a good resource. All righty. Well, we'll see you all in January, probably, if not sooner, I guess. Maybe.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
See y'all.
Bye.
Bye.